Okay, so here we are. So it's Alan Herity from Momentum Search and Selection, and we are conducting one of our Momentum interviews today. And I'm absolutely delighted to be joined by Kelly Smith. How are you doing, Kelly?
I'm fabulous. Thank you, Alan. Lovely to see you again after a little while.
Yeah, it has been a little while, hasn't it? So thanks so much for taking so much time out of your very busy agenda to meet with me today. So the concept for today, and I won't spoil it for the viewers, is the concept of a watermelon project and the critical role of a sponsor in this. And you're going to talk us through that today, Kelly. Do you mind if I just give the viewers a little bit of an introduction regarding yourself?
I'll go for it.
Okay, excellent. So we've known each other for a little while now. And so for me, you're a transformation executive with an impressive track record of strategy, execution and delivery across finance, customer service, operations, digital and technology, innovation, large-scale mergers and acquisitions, product management with a really, humanistic approach to leadership. I hope I'm describing you well.
I think you've done a pretty good job, and I think you can have lots of verbiage to describe me, but if I sort of had to put it, it'd be that last part, which is my passion is knowing that change is the one constant in life, that, really it's about transforming businesses through humanistic leadership. And Alan, you and I have spoken a lot about this, and that is really around the fact that you can have all the tech in the world, in which tech is the one that's going to help us transform, but it's us as individuals that really help shape and use that tech in the way for good or to transform. And so people are the key, and people in particular, when you bring them together as a team that have got a really strong shared purpose to transform. So that's the bit that gets me up in the morning and enjoying all those wonderful things that you said about me. But more, I think of that little bit like a pie, which is, lots of things to add, lots of value to help transform in different ways and forms.
Fantastic. Okay, well, we're going to unpack a few things today. So if you don't mind, I'll get cracking with my first question, which is a little bit elaborating on what we've said so far. So if you could tell us a little bit about you and what drives you, that would be wonderful.
What drives me? So really, and it comes back to what we mentioned before, Alan, just around, why do I get up out of bed in the morning? And people ask me that sometimes. And, yes, we get paid to come to work, and yes, I get paid to deliver transformation, and I get paid to help organisations drive their businesses forward. But probably the most important thing is and I don't want to say it's all unpaid, but the thing that gets me out of bed in the morning is really helping people shine and do things that they didn't think were possible and uplift their skills and experience. And so, if there's people watching here that haven't been on projects before, put your hand up, jump on. Most of us that live in projects land accidentally fell into projects land. I don't tell anyone, an accountant by trade originally, but really I think that felt a bit boring for me. So definitely jump into the projects land. It's sometimes wild and woolly, but it's a whole lot of fun and very satisfactory, and you have lots of friends along the way.
Yeah, fantastic. Wow, that's really, really good. We've discussed this many times, the concept of the watermelon project. And when you described it to me, I was really fascinated by your exploration. So for the viewers, do you mind explaining what that is to us?
It's funny, Alan, and I was talking to the team today, and I was actually talking to my change in comms team, and we were talking about the watermelon project. I said, is that because watermelons are really delicious? I said, well, this one's a little bit different. I said, you've got to probably think about it more in colours, and particularly colours in project land. And I said, I haven't found the cantaloupe yet, but if you look at a watermelon, it is green on the outside and very red in the inside. And quite often, how watermelon projects, we find watermelon projects is you quite often have a sponsor putting pressure on the project manager, or sponsor expecting that the project is being reported green, and so it is reported green. But when you look under the bonnet, things aren't going so well. And so that's what we call the watermelon project. And I learned a lot about that when in my old banking and wealth management days, understanding a lot about that. And in particular, working with sponsors to help them be good sponsors to be able to spot watermelon projects or support their teams to make sure that we didn't go and do watermelon reporting, as I'd like to call it. And there's a couple of reasons that project managers too. So it can be top down and it can be bottom up in terms of watermelon projects. In that, sometimes, and that's why the role of a sponsor is important, is sometimes our project managers don't feel safe in reporting a colour other than green, even though things might be a bit rocky, or that they fear that their program will be stopped. And just a few notes that are down here, or, they've got some pressure to show that they're delivering outcomes. But what happens from my experience is that, if you don't truthfully and don't have, as a sponsor, create a safe space for our project managers and program managers to be able to report accurately, you'll end up what I call the car accident a little bit later on. And, it takes 9 times more effort to sort out a problem than it does to help avoid that problem and just be very transparent. So that transparency for me is absolutely the key.
Okay. And I've spent a lot of time in this space, recruiting in this space, as you spent a lot of time working in this space. This is an interesting one, but what are your thoughts on politics and agendas and stuff like that within organizations? Can they sometimes contribute to this sort of situation?
They can, and I think that's where I would encourage organisations to really support sponsors as well. So there's the element of psychological safety, and then there's, really sponsorship is leadership, really. It shouldn't be something I do over and above my role, but sponsorship is leadership, and it's a great privilege, but also a great responsibility. And the role of the sponsor is to help the programs that they sponsor navigate through the politics and support the teams through politics. And I think a lot of that too comes down to the culture of the organisation, the expectations, brave leadership and courage there. As a sponsor, one should be, leading with the right behaviours. As a sponsor, they need to be allocating time. And, as I said to you before, it's not just a side gig that they do, but it's very much part of our roles as leaders to sponsor and really have that mindset and openness for the program leaders, whether it be a project manager, program director, etc., to be able to come and talk about some of the challenges and problems and work through them. And that very big statement that we forget to ask sometimes as leaders, but how do we help? How can I help you? And that's absolutely critical so that you can really help the team progress. Because at the end of the day, they're part of you, an extension, no matter how the functions of the organisation are structured. With agility and cross-functional teams, what's really, really important is they are very much part of your team when you are a sponsor and you're the leader of that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think, 3 things which resonated with me when we were talking about this were, that leadership from the sponsorship really leaning in to support the initiative that creating the safe space, as you mentioned earlier. And the other thing that really resonated with you, what you just said just then, how can I help? And really remove those roadblocks and help people move forward. So I think that's fantastic, which is a nice segue into my next question, Kelly. So you have overseen, over $200 million worth of, portfolios and large deliveries. What role does a person like you have in assisting those sponsors to be the best sponsors that they can be?
Yeah, I think that's a terrific question. So I think there's, multiple facets and ways that you can do that. And I've done that before. So the first thing is making sure that you've got solid sponsor training. It's not sort of something that they roll out in the leadership deck when you go to leadership training. So how do you make sure that your sponsors are feeling safe? And, there's nothing more fabulous than not just putting them through training, but then mentoring a sponsor to be, a wonderful sponsor and helping them navigate. So when I was a GM of this $200 million portfolio, part of my role was solely focused on helping sponsors, not just those that, were new, but also those experienced, help navigate and think about and ask the right questions in different ways. So the best sponsors I've found are asking for help, but also making sure, part of my role also used to be making sure that you marry up the right program manager or director with the right executive sponsor. And that yin and yang when they work is really fabulous. And maybe I can share a little story. I'm sure the person won't mind. I said to this fabulous executive that I wanted to change the PM, the phase of the program have moved into something a bit different. We had a different direction and they quite liked the previous one. And I said, no, I need this one. And oh, well, what if I don't get along? What if I don't? And I said, well, you just, this person was a very passionate person and more of a heart leader and really beautiful person. But, and I sort of thought very closely about the type of person that I needed to marry with. And I actually picked the opposite person. So to them. And it was truly a yin and yang relationship, but really measured. So I had the heart and then I had the balance view. So we could actually, use each other in a really, really good way. And that particular executive at the time thanked me very much and said, well, by the way, you can never take them away from me now. So isn't that wonderful? Also part of my role was also making sure that our executives, if you're using agility, that it's really important that they are part of the agility program as well. Agility isn't about, we all know agility is about mindset and you can't just get that overnight. Making sure that you support your executives and, front staff right the way to executives, so top, bottom up in terms of that agility journey and agenda for the organisation and making sure that's very much connected in to your strategic priorities and the way you do things as well, because you can't expect people to move to agility if they don't know what they don't know. So that's really important and the role that I've played in the past. Probably the last part of the role that I think is important when you have a role like mine is when things are wobbly in programs, is, working with that executive to, look at different options, think about how things are positioned at steering committees and work through. So sometimes it's by side, sometimes, you're behind and they're leading from the front, but you're there to catch and support them and putting the environment around them so that, they are very successful sponsors, because success of the team, the success of the sponsor gives us the transformation that we need and therefore gives us, the strategic change the organisation is looking for. And what do you know, we deliver on our strategic objectives.
No, fantastic. That's great. So if you were to have any, final thoughts or parting words to sponsors, what would be your maybe top 2 recommendations for sponsors if they were looking at their next set of initiatives, for example?
Yeah, so I think, now you're only giving me 2, Alan, but I think the first
you can have as many as you want, Kel.
My first thing would be really have the mindset that it isn't an extra part of your role, but you have a great privilege and a responsibility as a sponsor, and because you are a leader, no matter sort of what you're doing in that program, but that is absolutely critical to have that mindset. And the other thing I might say is just around making sure you're asking the questions constantly. How can I help? And creating that environment where it's not about blame, but it's okay, or how do we help? How do we face into this? What can we do differently? Is there something I can do differently too? And creating a space where that two-way feedback can also work. Because you'll be sometimes people feel a little bit surprised, but, our project teams sometimes see things that, because they're so across many parts of the business, it's really important as a sponsor to listen because there's some really sometimes critical bites that you can get that really helps think about how you can influence as that leader that helps support the delivery of the program, which then comes back to your last question around managing organisations with a bit more politics than others. That's your role as a sponsor. And if you can help, bottom down, top up, you're in a terrific space.
Yeah, that's fantastic. It's been really fascinating. To be honest with you, we could go on about this particular subject for quite a bit of time, but I know that you're very, very busy. So I'd like to say to you, thank you very much for taking the time today. Thanks for, giving your insights on the Watermelon Project and the role of a sponsor within all of that. And I'd like to thank you so much for your time. And obviously we'll share this on our social media channels with our audience, and I'm sure they'll get a lot out of it.
Lovely. Well, thanks so much, Alan. Always a pleasure to have a bit of fun and chew the fat with you. So it's great to connect again.